Welcome to From the White Pill Box, the podcast where we stomp on statism and find the white pills along the road to a stateless society. I'm your host, Mark Maresca. I'm the author of the Substack articles of the same name, From the White Pill Box, content specifically for the already red-pilled, libertarians, voluntarists, anarchists, people who've overcome the myth of statism or are close to it. It's easy for us to be black-pilled, to believe evil will win. That's where the white pill box comes in. There are real-world reasons to have hope. Let's get going.
Greetings, all. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is an interview I had with one of our Substack subscribers, James. We covered several topics like white pills, skepticism of the state, and strategy. The video is posted on YouTube and linked in the show notes, with the audio available on our other platforms. Enjoy. Greetings, all. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in today. Today is podcast number 32 of From the White Pill Box. This will be our very first interview that we're doing. One of our listeners, James, asked if he could ask a few questions, and I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to start off some interviews on this podcast. James, welcome to From the White Pill Box.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me. Welcome from the left coast.
Yes, you are in California.
Yep, Southern California.
Nice. Okay, well, for our listeners, I happen to be on the East Coast, so James and I are 3 hours apart from each other. So sorry that you're on the left coast. My sympathies.
Thank you. Understood.
As I said, James had communicated with me a couple of questions pertaining to our recent Myth of Authority series. So I thought I'd ask James if he might pose the questions so we can start a little bit of a conversation.
Fantastic. And I'm going to dive right in. What's kept me engaged in your series, which is From the White Pill Box, is real-world reasons for hope. That's what's kept me going and kept me engaged, because you focus on that and I love it. But in our day-to-day lives, we are constantly exposed to what's going on in the world around us, and you can't even ignore it sometimes. For instance, right now, the whole tariff thing is turmoil and stressful, yet we keep getting dragged into that, and that being the focus. The current thing, whatever. So talk a little bit about the white pills, staying focused, and going from that point.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's the psychology of how current events impacts us. So we touched on this in the live stream, but I didn't get anywhere near into the detail I would have liked. So for me, anyway, it was not really an issue of training myself or following any kind of steps. For me, it just happened to be that I spent so much time on forming or extracting the right pills from the culture, or from current events, or from long-term trends, or from the nature of man, or whatever it might be. I had spent so much time on it and internalizing these actual white pills, thinking about them, letting them sort of really be part of my DNA, that I found that my ability to look at the details, the black pills we see every day, well, exactly what you were talking about, really didn't affect me as much as before. They roll off like water off the back of a duck. It was just sort of a habit that I sort of formed. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
So therefore, if I were to advise on how we can help, it would really be just think about these things more and more. Really understand how it is that a white pill is a white pill, how they tend to be applicable to the long term. So in the long run, it's going to be okay. I think in any challenge that we have in life, whether it's an illness or an accident, or whether it's a personal issue or whatever it might be, if we remember that, yes, this is hard now, but it's not going to last forever. There will be a day when this thing is not the case. That always can help us feel better. That's exactly what's happening here in this political, cultural situation, where if I just spend more time thinking about the long term, that it is going to be okay in the long run, that helps. But again, just to emphasize, not just having that good attitude. That's never what I'm talking about. It's actually internalizing those white pills. So when I say that we're already in the transition to a free society, I'm not just asserting that. I'm backing that up with real world evidence. Or when I say that the state is a weak adversary, I'm not just saying they're weak. I'm explaining exactly why they're weak. So, for example, when I say that the state is weak in the sense that they have no logical backing, they have no logical foundation. Well, I've internalized that. Then, when I see Donald Trump or Nancy Pelosi or some governor or mayor saying something, my mind instantly, without even thinking about it, realizes that person is an illegitimate person. They're speaking contradictory terms. They're illegitimate. I instantly know that. So anything they do, as bad as it might be, I think there's no grounding for that. It's unsustainable. So that's how I believe the white pill attitude helps me.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear, what we've kind of touched on before in our communication. And it probably took me at least a year to get to that point where what you're hearing becomes heard in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Your brain is now processing it differently, as this is irrelevant to what I believe.
Yeah. And it's, to me, there's almost a parallel to the red pill process itself. For most of us, we were red pilled at a particular point in our life, and we can kind of remember it. We remember when we had our aha moment or our aha period of life. And it's almost like this marker that divides ourselves before and after. So for me, it happened to be when I was 21 or 22 years old. Well, now I could delineate or separate those two parts of my life. Adulthood before that and adulthood after, where before that I know I was blue-pilled. I know that I was subject and a victim of the myth of authority. I remember that. And then I remember after that when, wow, I woke up. I was no longer enthralled by statism. I realized it was illegitimate. That's what we call the red pill moment, the aha moment. Well, to me, some of the insights from this Myth of Authority series were exactly like that. They were so eye-opening that I can almost say this was a red pill experience. Do you relate to that in any way, having heard the series?
Absolutely. Not only in the moment, but now looking back at my career, for the most part, was in some level of sales type stuff, somewhat at retail, then at a wholesale level, and constantly looking at, the only way to really say this is, this came into effect much more at the wholesale level, is things going on between, and to use the whole terminology, voluntary actions that had between me and companies or individual business owners or whatever, that had roadblocks because of the state. Wherever those regulations or restrictions came from. And I just remember for years thinking, this is in the way of productivity. This is in the way of just economics doing what it should be doing.
Right. Isn't that interesting? Because this was all before you had any real exposure to anarchist ideas, I assume.
To a point, that's a deep well of interesting thoughts. But for the most part, yes, there was nothing like this your series, Larkin, Patrick, Michael Malice. There's none of that going on, but there was always a to put a word you've used multiple times. There was always a healthy skepticism about there has got to be a better way for all of this to work.
Right, which most of us, that's about as far as it goes. Because really, if you do talk to the average person, just the average person off the street, a normie or newbie as we might call them, they'll often have some intuition just like that, where they're thinking, this is messed up. But that's it. Their mind stops right there. And that's the fog in the mind. That's the false self. That's the indoctrination, making sure it goes no further than that. It doesn't want you thinking, because the minute that fog clears just a little bit, it's game over. Did you find that in your own experience with either my series or anything related, like you said, Michael Malice or others you've listened to? Did you have any sense? Look, this is looking back, not at the time, that what was happening was a clearing of the fog.
Not until just maybe the last couple of years.
Okay.
When it was like, hard to explain, but so not years ago. Just in the last 2 to 3, I think at the most, post-COVID.
Right.
COVID really was for me this is wrong. This is wrong on every level.
Wow. And being in California, that must have been particularly noticeable because of how you guys experienced it.
I guess I can honestly say this. I had left a job for the last time a week before the world shut down.
Wow.
Had I stayed in it, I might wonder that the indoctrination would have stuck and maybe got worse. But I think having stepped outside of it and had the freedom to be able to do that, it was all of a sudden like, the only way I could say is this isn't right. This is wrong, and there's people making decisions about what I can and can't do, and this is wrong. It wasn't defined any more than that. It was no, this is wrong. I now can't go to the grocery store without putting a mask on. I don't want to put a mask on. I don't see a need to put a mask on.
Right. Yeah. Look at how just sort of natural that feeling is. There really were very few people who were like, oh boy, the world's shutting down. I love it. I love that the schools are closed. I love that I have to wear a mask everywhere I go. I love that I have to keep the distance from people. I mean, that just goes against our natural inclinations. So this is really just another example of the battle that the state or that statism has to keep the propaganda up.
Right.
It's so hard to make people do things that are not natural to them. Now, granted, it has succeeded in doing that. It has succeeded in propagandizing the world for millennia. But we are now in a very different time. Things are changing right now. We happen to be lucky to be living right at that time when the right factors have sort of coalesced to challenge that. And that's one of the reasons I say the state is a weak adversary.
In the process of this, of me saying what I did before, a fog clearing did pop into my head. Probably a year and a half ago. It's hard to pinpoint it. But it was something Michael Malice said. And the fog didn't clear in the moment, but it was in the days and weeks after that I just kept thinking about the comment. And I think it's his definition of what voluntarism is. No, it's anarchy, I guess.
Anarchism, yes.
You don't speak for me. Everything else is application.
Yes.
That, like, it stopped me in my tracks. It stopped my brain. And then over the next days and weeks, it's like, you don't speak for me. Everything else is application. Everything else are details. Everything else is, if I stop focusing on the details, why do I need somebody speaking for me?
Right.
What instances in my day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year life, what instance do I need someone else speaking for me? Well, I don't got any legal stuff going on, so I don't need an attorney speaking for me. And I went down that path mentally.
Yes.
Okay, so why is it I'm buying into a system of leaders, political leaders speaking for me? So, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, that's exactly it. I like how a very simple phrase that in this case Michael Malice came up with sort of pierced right into your subconscious. It went right through that fog of indoctrination, and it kind of stuck itself like into a tree, an arrow into a tree, and it just stayed there. And your subconscious did the rest. It just took that and started to think on it. And it might not even been, it probably did not start consciously. You knew something about that resonated with you, but then your subconscious was working on that. But it could only do that because it was so simple, so elegantly put. That leads to something that I've not spent a lot of time on, which is strategy. And now I've criticized libertarian conventional strategy. But if I were to be asked, well, if I really want to do something, what kinds of things can I do to move the needle along? That would be one of them. Come up with the simplest of simple phrases or catchphrases or memes or whatever it is that just pierce that fog, get right to the root of it. Because if you can do that, there will be people, just like yourself in this example, who it resonates with. And that hits them. And their subconscious works on it and increases that skepticism. To me, that's a way to leverage our language and our thinking to come up with quick little nuggets of insights that can get into that brain. The scholarship is great. A full-length book on economics, we need all that. But that's going to really satisfy only a very narrow audience, and it's also going to be more of a long-term value because of future institutions in a free society that secure a free society will need legal and economic philosophical grounding. But for the average person who we really just need to be a little more skeptical, those little nuggets, those are the ways it works. And your example is a letter-perfect example of that.
I think I'm the average person, and I've been listening to you for a while. You have that nerd tendency of what you just talked about.
Right.
Those that know me know I love to quote movies and stuff like that. And along this path, Contact, Jodie Foster years ago, they talk about Occam's razor, the philosophy, whatever it is, that the simplest explanation tends to be the right one, tends to be the best one, however you want to find it. Doesn't the state, the whole system and apparatus of that, want us to stay in the details, stay with within the muck?
Oh yeah, it absolutely does. That's to their advantage because that keeps the scrambled brain, the fog, going. Because for most people, eventually, when they hear all this barrage of conflicting information, details from the state, eventually, what do we all do? We say, that's too much for me. That's above my head. That's for better people than me. All those expressions are ways of just giving up the thinking, and that's what they want. But Larkin Rose put it so well when he said, the whole apparatus of the state and statism and all this, think of it as this monstrous machine with complex gears and complex electronics and this and that. And the way to actually make that thing stop is to walk behind it and reach for the electric plug and pull it out. It just stops.
Yeah.
And a person might say, that's too simple. That won't stop it. But it will. And that's what identifying the myth of authority is. That's the significance of it. It really does get to the root cause, right down to it. And you unplug that myth of authority and the rest is game over. And the rest is, as you said before, just a matter of details.
Talking about the fog, going back to that briefly for a moment, is where I live. we get a lot of fog. And there are times when you wake up in the morning and it's there and you drive through it. But in the area where I am, you drive through a particular area, there's no fog. Then you get back into it. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of my journey as well, which was moving along with life, the fog coming back, then getting back into conversations either with fellow travelers, as we call them sometimes, or a new podcast coming your way or whatever it is, and you start, wait a minute. Let me go back to what's simple, what's easy.
I get it. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Let me see. We'll probably wrap up in a few minutes here. I wanted to ask you, just in terms of preference, I've done now, we'll say 3 different forms of content on the Substack. I've done essays, and then I've done audio podcasts, and now we're embarking into video interviews. All 3 are available. Do you personally have any preference among those?
Ooh, interesting. Only for the last couple of years am I new to podcasts in general. I really kind of never had a purpose. But now that we're at this point, I think the video works as both. Because there are times I'll be driving and I'll put on the YouTube podcast but not watch it. Okay. But I'm listening to it. So, right. But there are times I do like sitting there and watching the interaction of the two. You know, mm-hmm. whether it's like there's times Larkin and Patrick will get on together or something like that, or even a Joe Rogan who's talking to someone in this direction.
Right.
You do like to see it, but I think I think it'd almost be interesting to go back and video the essays, or maybe use them as a topic for it. So the answer to the question is, if I've got it on a video format, I have it on an audio and a video.
You're right.
By default.
Right. That's good to know. Yeah, I'm just sort of polling different listeners right now and subscribers just to get a general feel. My hope is to line up some more interviews, and possibly with some people we've heard of in our space. So I'm working on that right now. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up for today?
Let's see. Other than the fact that I love when you talk about, and others, you in particular, talk about just creating some skepticism. You've talked a number of times about we don't need people to come 100% of the way or even 50% of the way. Just become skeptical, which another thing I've kind of thought about you in particular is this is almost a your works have been almost a master class in critical thinking. And part of critical thinking would be skepticism. Mm-hmm. Expand on that for just a moment. I know you want to wrap it up.
Sure. Well, skepticism, that's right. It's fundamentally part of our pursuit of knowledge. We have to be able to question, because.
But do you ever feel like we're in a society that's forgotten how to do that?
Well, it's definitely not a skill set that you see out there a lot. But I'm always careful to answer these kind of questions because it might imply that I'm saying I advocate that, whatever, the public schools teach more skepticism. I'm not trying to push a particular agenda or get bogged down in those kind of details. The general answer to that is the more skepticism people have about the state in particular, the better. In terms of our individual skill levels at being skeptical, a lot of that really is influenced by the propaganda that we've gotten since birth, because we are told not to question, to believe what you hear, to follow the leader, to follow the president or whatever, follow the law.
And you're bad or wrong for not following.
You're exactly right. Exactly. So all of that is a following mentality. Well, if you're brought up that way, you're going to obviously be less skeptical. So that's a bad thing. So, if the myth of authority is eroding, then automatically that means you have less automatic faith that you have moral leaders, and there's no one left in that absent spot in your brain to be beholden to. There's only you. There's only you. And that means you're going to be more skeptical naturally. And that's all of us, anyone who's been red-pilled. The one thing you notice is that you look at a politician, you look at a law, you look at a current event that has some political aspect to it, and instantly you're skeptical. Instantly you say, where's the law behind that made all this happen? So skepticism is something that is fluid in us. It's controllable with experience. So yeah, I'd want to see more people have a better skill at being skeptical, but that was trained out of us. So once again, how do you untrain it? You get over that myth first. Getting over that myth is the core of it. And so once again, as an example, yes, helping someone get over the myth is really also automatically helping them become more skeptical.
So at the beginning of this, you wanted to be kind of a coach. You were coaching, right?
Yeah, I saw it as a way to help the red pill feel positive because there are real world reasons to be white pilled. So I would want to coach them to feel better. That's kind of how I saw this.
And through this, you've realized so much more. What do you want to be now? Teacher?
Okay, so I still want everyone to be red-pilled. Well, I want everyone red-pilled. I want the already red-pilled or close to being red-pilled to still be white-pilled, to still have confidence. I think that's very important. If I have a role, it's to help them get white-pilled, help them stay white-pilled, help them to white-pill others who are in their libertarian anarchist circle. So yeah, I still want to do that. But because through the course of this series, this Myth of Authority series, I seem to have uncovered such profound white pills that they were almost red pills themselves.
Wow.
New insights. And what I mean by that, just as an example, we're already in the transition to a free society right
Absolutely.
now. Okay, I didn't think that when I started off. I thought, like everyone else, as a free society, as this vague goal that's ahead of us somewhere. And that's it. I didn't think about it beyond that. You see? I was...
The someday thing.
Yeah. But I observed how that was a fog in my own head about the future. I didn't think it through. I didn't put any more thought into it. I just assumed that's just a future thing. I don't have to think about it more. Well, that's how the blue pill are now about statism. They don't think about it. So I feel like the insight that we're already on in the transition to a free society, that's a red pilling moment for me. That's a wake up call. So that's one example of an insight that woke me up. The fact that the state, when I say the state, I mean the bullies, that's the law enforcement, the military, and the politicians, that subset of the state, those people.
Those that can make the victimization happen?
Right, those with the gun or who can dispatch the gun, dispatch the people with the gun. That subset, which is just, whatever it is, it's 1% of the whole population. They play a role in the transition. They play a direct role in the psychology of the transition. It isn't the libertarians figuring out how, or libertarians being successful in convincing enough people and then magically we transition. No, the bullies have a role. Now that doesn't mean they're red-pilled and dismantled from within. I don't mean that. I mean they play a psychological role in backing off. Psychologically backing off over time. Okay, that right there, that's an insight that I came to. Right, another red pill. So you asked about
fog clearing.
Right, fog clearing. Okay, so I wouldn't call that a role of a coach anymore. That's now the role of, once again, waking up people. But now the people are the already red-pilled about statism. They're already red-pilled about statism. They're not red-pilled about we're already in the transition to a free society. It's begun. They're not red-pilled about the bullies will play a role in that, a direct role. They don't know that. They don't believe it. They would reject it if they heard it. Okay, now I feel it's my job to red-pill them. So if that's a teacher role, then we'll call it a teacher role. But it's more really just a messenger role. That's the message I want to get into the already red-pilled heads. And that relates to strategy. So if I'm asked, well, so you're saying traditional activism is basically a waste of time to try to get people red-pilled. Conventional messaging, which is just, I take a side on tariffs on this side or that side. It's a waste because it's just another form of advocating some kind of statist answer. Okay, what strategy are you saying? Well, I'm not sure we need a strategy because I really do think this is going to be mostly organic. But if there's any strategy, it's trying to realize that these red pills are there. And if we know the transition's happening, if we know that the bullies are going to play a role and the various other insights that I seem to have uncovered are true, then that's going to change how libertarians who hear this look at this whole thing. It'll change their own strategies. And in that sense, I sometimes feel like this libertarian movement are just a bunch of people just scattered, running in all different directions. And it's not like I want them all to do one thing, but that scattering is also largely comprised of wasting their time. Like, for example, those who are in the Libertarian Party, trying to elect this person or trying to advance this initiative or whatever. Okay, if you can get one particular law that's particularly victimizing people in a local township somewhere repealed, great, go for it if you feel that's going to make less victims. But that's not really what the Libertarian Party as a whole is doing. It's just, to me, wasting its time trying to get this message out that whatever, reduce the state, get better guys in there, get libertarians elected. So I feel like I would like to see all these scattered people corralled a little bit, work within some boundaries that are bounded by the reality of where we are now, which is we want the myth of authority questioned. We want skepticism to grow. We're on the road to a transition to a free society as we speak. The state is on its last legs. The bullies are part of the equation of this, and therefore they have a role. If we could get those insights out there into the minds of the libertarians, then maybe they'll act accordingly. They will change their strategy accordingly so that they don't waste their time as much. That's, in a nutshell, what I feel now my revised mission statement is.
Wow, getting that message out, getting that in their heads. They clearly have the energy.
Yeah, oh yeah. They have the motivation, the energy. It all comes from that good place of wanting things to get better. But I just don't think the movement hasn't spent time really digging under the surface. If I'm wrong about all these insights, great, I want to hear it. But I have yet to find anyone who could challenge them. And I want them challenged. But if they're right, if I'm right, then yeah, that's a big, that could be a big win for what people are doing.
And you've made it so clear in your podcasts and writings that the results have been meager. And I really like what you said, one of the last ones, wellness check. It's time for a serious wellness check on the movement, on those putting those types of efforts into it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was essentially it. My attempt to say, come on, 50 years, that's a long time for the movement not to have reflected on itself. To sit back, breathe, think, talk about what we've done, what we were trying to do, what the goals are really at the root. you don't see that happening. It's just every person getting red-pilled and then just deciding, oh, this is what makes me feel good to do this. And I'm not faulting it. Like you said, it's all, they mean well. But we're supposed to be the thinkers here, which means we need to spend some time thinking and not acting yet. So,
well, and this is how my brain works is, would a company have gone 50 years with minimal profits?
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to remember that. That's a great analogy. A company would go out of business.
They would have painfully, there's no business that would have painfully gone along for 50 years.
Right. In fact, it's government offices that go on for 50 years with no results. It's
Whoa.
Like libertarians are not supposed to be inefficient like that. And I get it. This is not a centralized movement. Yeah. There is no person at the middle of this guiding what people do. So it's like cats. You can't herd cats. Very hard to do. And I'm not saying we have to try to do that, but there's guidelines that we can think within that guide us, the principles that guide us, the fundamental assumptions, and that was never established. But all that is because the myth of authority itself was never identified as the root of statism from the beginning. And even though it's been identified now in recent years with books like The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose and Michael Huemer's book, The Problem of Political Authority, you don't see that catching on. You don't see that somebody saying, hey, they cracked the code. Hey, they figured out the root. We need to all remind ourselves that that's where we should be going now, not just hate the state. And that hasn't happened. So that's my motivation. And I think we'll wrap it up for today. So thank you, James, very much for your time today. I hope you had a good time. I certainly did.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, very much. Let's do it again.
Okay, we will. And until next time, folks, take care and see you next time.
Many thanks to Substack for hosting my podcast and my articles. And thanks especially to you for listening. And remember, keep looking for those white pills